Kevin De Bruyne! From the one! From the brink of despair! Elation! From catastrophe! Cacophonic joy! The stuff of stellar champions! That's why City are a sensation.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to After Extra Time, the World Football Podcast. This is the first official episode of the Summer Series. What is the Summer Series, I hear you ask? Good question. The Summer Series is a more broad chat regarding anything newsworthy that's happened in the world of football and sometimes even beyond. We're going to have paper talk, headlines, international recaps, news from leagues we don't usually focus on, and more interviews than you can poke a stick at. So let's get on with it. Returning to the mic this week after a well-deserved break is the editor-in-chief of the sportsbank.net, author of Transatlantic Passage, How the Premier League Redefined Soccer in America. You might have seen him swimming in a resort pool in the midst of a tropical storm. It's Paul M. Banks. Paul, mate, how you going?
Yeah, that's right. I took on Tropical Storm Alex and swam in the pool. It was funny, like our trip began as like the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because we had so many airline cancellations and had to reroute and stay over in Charlotte. And then by the time we got to Florida, then it was like one of those horror movies. Like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, where you go to the resort and there's a storm and it's empty. And some of these seaside Airbnbs are like, oh my God, it's a disaster movie. In the end, it all turned out all right. It never became a full-fledged hurricane, and it was out to sea within the first or second day we were there.
So it sounds like you had a bit of bad luck over there. We were talking off mic yesterday, and you said that you stopped in Charlotte, North Carolina. I asked you if you spotted the legendary nature boy Ric Flair. Unfortunately, you didn't. But you want to tell us a little bit about your holiday, mate?
Yeah, for all you Scarface fans out there, I certainly am one. We visited the hotel where Tony Montana and Manny had this, some of the most iconic lines in the film was said in the same pool at the Fontainebleau Hotel, which was, just up the strip from where we were staying. And there is actually a site, if you go on Google Maps, it does actually say Scarface. Like, it doesn't say what is actually at the site or anything. It actually says Scarface. And you're like, what? like, how is this possible? Like, Scarface is fictional. And it's 728 Ocean Drive. It looks nothing like it looks in the film. Today, it's completely different. It used to be a Johnny Rockets. Today, it's a CBS. And it's right next door to the Colony Hotel. And Kristen just wouldn't go with me. She's like, or she just wouldn't do it. And I'm like, come on. I'm like, it's only 2 or 3 miles down the road. She's like, oh, traffic at South Beach is awful. It's terrible. I'm like, oh, come on, let's go see it. And then I did think to myself, I'd literally be taking a picture of nothing. So I may as well just take a picture of anything in Miami Beach and just say that's it. And no one will know the difference. So that's what I did. I was out into the water quite a bit. And Kristen was just right on shore, like real shallow waters. And this stingray just comes right by her. And I was like, well, the stingray must be really hip because it's in Miami Beach. It's a stingray that knows all the right stingrays. Otherwise, we got a great guest on this episode, and we've got a lot to cover. We've got a lot of good material for the off-season dead time.
Absolutely. Let's jump straight into it, mate. We've got a slightly different format, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to take a few topics, and Paul and I are just going to have a bit of a general chit-chat about them, give our thoughts, opinions. I don't know if we're going to do it this week, but occasionally we might break some news, and then we'll wrap things up. We're not going to bogart too much of your time on your summer holiday. So let's jump into it, Paul. First thing on the run sheet today, and this is something that, there's not a lot of new developments here, but there definitely seems to be an appetite for information regarding this. And of course, we're talking about Mason Greenwood at Manchester United.
The only development this past week that you could peg to it was another United forward who's been accused of rape, Cristiano Ronaldo. The criminal case, we knew a couple of years ago that wasn't going to proceed. The civil case got dismissed a few days ago. They could appeal it. We'll see. With Mason Greenwood, the legal process really doesn't get started until the end of the month. We'll see what it shows. Obviously, the evidence there is quite damning. Just to fill everyone in, late January, Harriet Robson is the name of his ex-girlfriend. She posted some very haunting and disturbing audio of him beating her and raping her. And that went viral. And ever since then, of course, Mason Greenwood has basically, for all intents and purposes, disappeared, as he should. He made bail, very expensive bail, out on bond, faces multiple charges. He was arrested on several different counts. And we don't know how the legal process is going to play out. We don't know when he's going to be back, if he's going to be back, if he'll ever play football again. Again, the evidence is overwhelming. And obviously, this woman, for her to take the time to do that, to think about it, to tape him, obviously this had been going on in the past, had been going on before. So you're right. You're absolutely right. There's no new development. We don't know if he's going to be reinstated or where, or if he's going to play again or where. But you're absolutely right. There is a big time clamoring for it. There's a lot of all these stories about Mason Greenwood, totally explode in traffic because there's people out there searching to get answers. And so a lot of what I see on Twitter about him is rather haunting and disturbing. There's people who really just don't get how the legal process works, and they don't like this idea, like free Mason Greenwood, like they say, or they think he's innocent. It's like, I don't know.
It's tribalism at its worst. This free Mason Greenwood nonsense. Let him play. You have to let the course of justice run. Listen, we all seen the video, we all seen the pictures, we all heard the audio. This guy's guilty. So those people out there that are getting on their high horse, defending this piece of shit human, need to wake up to themselves. Quite frankly, it makes me upset. But just generally, with the clamoring for information about it, I think that I kind of anticipated that. I think that with the transfer window open and teams are clearing players out and bringing players in, and the Mason Greenwood question was always going to rear its ugly head. This has still got a lot of legs. It's got a long way to run, but we'll be across it here on After Extra Time.
You did a really good piece about how much he's getting trolled online.
It was, I couldn't believe it, honestly. I know there's like I mentioned earlier, there's a bit of tribalism in football, and you back your players or you back your team 100%. And with the advent of social media, it's easier to have banter with opposition fans and stuff. There's some people out there that don't seem to be able to comprehend the seriousness of the issue. I mean, he's charged with suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill, amongst other things. And just because he's a football player, because he wears a Manchester United shirt, some people think it's okay to troll this poor girl or say horrible things on her social media accounts. It makes you wonder. I'm a football fan, you're a football fan. A lot of the people we talk to on this podcast, the majority of them, I would say, are football fans, and you just think everyone's operating on the same level of understanding when it comes to stuff like this. Then you have a look online and you realize that's certainly not the case.
It's really disturbing how people just don't get it or don't want to get it. And they don't understand. Like, I got trolled for something I wrote. The CIES Football Observatory, whatever that is, whatever that thing is, and they make a chart, they make a list every year, rank the top 100 most valuable players in football.
Yep.
And
I read that. Yep.
Thank God for them that they do it during the downtime. There's nothing else to talk about. They claim they've got a whole science behind it. I looked at it and I'm like, Mason Greenwood is in the top 30 or top 40. Like, are you kidding me?
It's hard to believe that he has any value at the moment. Just from a PR standpoint, you imagine that any club, even Manchester United, would be hesitant to go anywhere near him because it would be an absolute disaster.
Right. His own team has scrubbed him. And even if he beats the charges and he walks, you can't unring that bell. And what's out there is out there. So I don't know who's going to want to sign him. And to say that not only he has value, but to have this high of value, and I just don't care about their, whatever metric they use to say that maybe it's on the pitch only. It's like, screw that. You can't. Life doesn't work that way.
Let's talking about this is a beautiful segue. I've missed your segues while you were away, mate, but this is a fantastic one. We're talking about the top 100 most valuable footballers. We've got a couple of them heading right to the top of the table in the Premier League with Erling Haaland and Darwin Nunez, both officially Manchester City and Liverpool players respectively. Let's have a look. Let's compare the pair.
Well, obviously Erling Haaland is the guy who gets all the headlines. He had the big name agent, Mino Raiola. His father played at Manchester City. He's just been this massive sensation everywhere he's gone. And, this transfer was 2 years in the make. Darwin Nunez is kind of more under the radar, which is crazy to think about considering he's the most expensive player in Liverpool history.
Yeah, it's incredible. I will admit that I had the blinders on a little bit until I seen the I think it was the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Nunez scored against Liverpool home and away. And it was clear his talent then. It's incredible to think that he's the most expensive Liverpool player of all time. When I guess a lot of Liverpool fans wouldn't have heard of him prior to 2022. But I just got I got a couple of stats here that just kind of backs up us even having this conversation. It's not just my Liverpool fandom getting in the way here. Darwin Nunez. Only Robert Lewandowski had a better minutes per goal ratio across Europe's top 6 leagues during the 21-22 season. That's out of players that played at least 20 games. So Robert Lewandowski, Hector called him a cheat code. He's not wrong. Be interesting to see how he goes at a different club next year, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Robert Lewandowski, every 84 minutes. That 84.31 is his minutes per goal ratio. Darwin Nunez, 84.39. So that is pretty prolific. So that's exciting. If he can replicate that in the Premier League, which is a whole nother kettle of fish, that'll be fantastic. And it made me think, oh wow, well, maybe we've got a bit better of a deal here. But then the next stat that I came across was top goals and assists per 90 minutes in Europe's top 5 leagues. Erling Haaland averages a goal or an assist 1.41 every 90 minutes. So every time he's on the pitch, he's guaranteed to either assist or score. And every 2 games, it's quite likely that he will probably either assist or score 3. So that's just a couple of stats to kind of highlight that these are a couple of the forwards at the top of their game at the moment.
Yeah, you could say the center forward is really back. It's going to be very much in vogue. And if Chelsea want to keep up, maybe they're going to have to sign a Lewandowski. United, they're going to have to get him. Kylian Mbappe is the guy who comes close to Erling Haaland in goals and assists per 90, and he's kind of considered the next big thing. People think he's going to be the heir once Messi and Ronaldo go away. Then you got to look at the Liverpool attack. I mean, I guess this move is made with, Sadio Mane heading out. Mo Salah says he'll stick around, see his contract out for next year, but then maybe after that he bails. And it's the new Liverpool attack is starting to take shape.
You said a couple of things that are worth touching on there. The number 9 is back in vogue. It's interesting. Liverpool and Manchester City. Manchester City probably more prominently, but both sides walked the Premier League last year. And a lot of times didn't play without a recognised number 9, which is interesting. And both teams have come out and bought recognised number 9s now, so that's interesting. And then Liverpool and Manchester City finished so far ahead of everyone else, and then they've both come out and splashed the cash and picked up a couple of these young strikers. It must be scary for other Premier League teams.
I mean, we hear a lot about a false 9. I wonder if that concept would apply to other positions, how much fun that would be. Like, we have a false number 1. He's not a true goalkeeper.
And the last little touchstone we've got this week is it's pretty self-indulgent. I'm not going to lie, but I guess it applies to everyone because it is the World Cup. But the Socceroos qualified for the World Cup, defeating Peru on penalties. And then the following day, New Zealand unfortunately fell to Costa Rica. So Costa Rica and the Socceroos are the last two teams to make up the 32 at the World Cup. It was fantastic. The game was not the best spectacle, but I was surprised. Australia dominated, which I did not anticipate. Told anyone that would listen, we had no chance of beating Peru, and I was dead wrong. We ushered in a new Australian sporting hero, Andrew Redmayne, who was substituted on. Australian manager Graham Arnold did his best Thomas Tuchel impression and substituted the goalkeepers off just prior to the shootout. And unlike Kepa, he managed to get the job done, saved the penalty, and Australia's in their 5th straight World Cup.
The fact that there was chicanery and little gamesmanship, little interesting, that just added to the spice of it. It was really cool, and a new hero for Australia.
Yeah. So yeah, we touched on this with Tyler in our interview, but the Aussie goalkeeper was up to no good a little bit. He's seen the Peruvian goalkeeper's water bottle with all the Australian penalty takers' names on it and what directions they go in, and he picked it up and he just threw it into the stands.
Well, I've seen you play knifey spoony before.
Thanks for that, Paul. That was fantastic. Stick around, folks. This week we do have an interview. I mentioned in the intro we're going to try and get a few more interviews over the summer break, and we have Chicago Fire play-by-play man Tyler Terens coming up next. So we got a special guest today on After Extra Time. It is none other than Chicago Fire play-by-play guy Tyler Terens. Tyler, thanks for joining us, mate. How you doing?
I am excellent. It is officially summertime shy. It is hot. It is steamy, but it certainly beats the cold, and I'm glad to be here with you guys right now.
It's bloody cold here in Australia. It seems like it's a bit of upside down. Let's jump into some questions. Paul, you got some questions for Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Got back from Miami, from South Florida, and it's 15 degrees cooler in Florida than it is right now in Chicago. So how often do you get to say that? But Tyler, first off, I'm very sorry about your New York Rangers, but your New York Mets are looking really good so far. So
listen, I was with my dad when the Rangers lost over the weekend, and we were following it on our phone. We were at a family wedding, and obviously we didn't want to, detract from the wedding or whatever. So we were kind of just keeping track of the score, and the second goal went in and we just gave each other a big hug, and it was a hell of a run. They weren't supposed to get there, but the Mets are one of the best teams in baseball, and they have a home series here in Chicago against the Cubs coming up soon, which I'm very excited about. But I know better than to get too excited about any of my New York teams, because I'm sure you guys have seen that I support some of the worst teams that have ever walked the face of the planet, and I have not been alive to see any one of them win a championship. So I am always cautiously optimistic, bordering on pessimistic.
One of my all-time favorite Simpsons sight gags is the New York episode where they're on the subway and a sign says, "Can you throw a ball? Come be a New York Jet today."
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the Jets, because I have probably the least amount of faith in them than anybody. Maybe the Knicks. They all stink.
Yeah, I did want to touch on, just across the river in New Jersey, because as I was writing my book, I probably interviewed more sources from the state of New Jersey for it than anywhere else. And they all say, well, like, what is in the water? Like the football, soccer, culture. I mean, New Jersey is tops. Like, why do you think that is?
It's a really interesting question. I'm lucky enough to work with Tony Meola, who obviously is from New Jersey as well, from Kearney. There's a great documentary called Soccer Town USA, where he, John Harkes, and Tab Ramos, who were the core of that U.S. men's national team in the 90 and 94 World Cup, they all basically grew up within a 2-mile radius of each other, with the exception of Tab, who obviously came to America a little bit late. But it's an extremely dense population, number one. It's an incredibly diverse state, and particularly in north central New Jersey, there's a massive Portuguese population right around the Newark area. And there just happens to be a really strong amount of, I think, good coaches and people who have grown up around the game. And, if you look back to like Tony's family and, that generation, just a lot of first generation Americans who grew up with soccer being their one and only sport and their religion. And then they sort of passed it along to their kin. And we find ourselves with a very strong soccer market. But The culture that I grew up around and the training that I received when I was playing was always top quality. And there was never like a sentiment in my family where I was like, I need to go somewhere else to go play proper soccer because everything that you needed was right there.
That's fascinating. So does New Jersey have a team in the MLS? Like, have they adopted one of the New York teams, or how does that work?
It depends. It depends on what Red Bulls fans think of that question. You know, obviously they play in Red Bull Arena, which is in Harrison, New Jersey, but they are labeled New York Red Bulls. So I think that New Jerseyans have adopted Red Bulls as their own. But yeah, it's in terms of support of professional teams, I think that's maybe the next step and the next evolution of it. But even if you go back to the days of the New Jersey / New York Metro Stars, which is what they, were first called, and going back to Giant Stadium, there was always a strong support for them. And I think New Jerseyans liked having them there. And it's just been, I guess, good for, people in New Jersey to have Red Bulls in there as well. But obviously, the front office at Red Bulls would prefer to be in New York, but it's difficult to find spaces. NYCFC will certainly attest to.
Right. Okay. I can see from your background there that you're a man of exquisite taste, much like myself. You're a Liverpool fan.
Love it.
Okay, so there's been a bit of news surrounding Liverpool, in the last couple of weeks. First of all, Darwin Nunez.
Very excited about it. I don't know him a ton. Obviously, he's coming over from a club that has an outstanding reputation in terms of developing young talent. He's 22 years old. It seems like he could play out on the wing if necessary, but obviously, if you're looking up and down the Liverpool, sort of striker winger list right now, he'll fit into a number 9. Strong on the ball, good in hold up play, and as Klopp has said time and time again, you are not going to be on this team if you do not work your tail off defensively. And that's like almost a prerequisite to scoring goals and being a good attacking player, is playing along that front three, because you're triggering not just the press, but the chase, as Pep Linders will sort of describe it, where you're not shaping it out, but you're more so just going to try to win the ball. So by all accounts, he is a Liverpudlian, by DNA, in terms of the way that he plays. And, with the signing, I think it sweetened a pretty sour taste of Sadio Mane exiting. And, obviously that will happen in the coming days. But very sad to see Sadio go. Incredible person, incredible player. And obviously was part of this golden generation of Liverpool that will hopefully continue with Nunez leading the line.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think you surmised that all perfectly. I'm very excited about the signing of Darwin Nunez as well. It's an interesting return fire to Manchester City signing Erling Haaland. So also, I wanted to ask you about the Apple TV deal. That's just, I'm not sure if it was announced yesterday or last week.
Yeah, yesterday.
It was yesterday. Yeah, right. Okay. 10 years, $2.5 billion. You think that's going to be a good thing for the league?
I think in the long run, yes. I think that there are probably a lot of people who are saying in the short term, you're going to, maybe alienate some of the casual viewers that might have stumbled upon an MLS game on network television. But anybody who takes a look at what the numbers have been on a game that's on ESPN, on FS1, or even Fox and the Big Fox and ABC, which are proper national television, you don't need cable to have those. Like, the numbers are not good. And what we're finding out about this Major League Soccer demographic is that they're incredibly young. They're going to consume their content on streaming platforms for the most part. And a lot of them are cord cutters. Much like myself, I have YouTube TV. So I think that it's going to be good in terms of like overall developing like a proper fan base and proper culture. The diehards are going to tune in no matter what. Season ticket holders get a free subscription no matter what, which is a really big positive. And overall, there's a really big disparity in terms of broadcast quality across the league. There's some teams that invest a lot of money into it, and there's some teams that invest the bare minimum, which there has been sort of a bare minimum set by MLS over the past number of years. So I think across the board, it is going to be good. It's a bittersweet thing, because I think there are going to be a decent amount of people in Major League Soccer who are going to lose their jobs. You think about maybe some managers of broadcast across clubs and commentators alike. I've been told that the amount of commentators in the league is basically going to be cut basically to, I think, 10 to 14 commentary teams. So if you're thinking about my position alone, you'll have 10 to 14 people out of a current 28. And that's including guys who are on national deals right now who are probably going to be thrown into that mix. So, it's changing TV in Major League Soccer as we know it, but I think overall it is going to be a very good thing for the club. And you're pairing with ultimately one of the best and smartest companies that this country has seen over the past 30 years. So, you're basically putting it in the hands of a very, very strong company, and it's a partnership, not just a rights deal. So MLS is going to split every subscription with Apple, which is a really big thing as well.
Over here in Australia, we started with the A-League, was subscription only, and we've just moved to free-to-air, and there were people banging the drum saying that it was going to make all the difference moving to free-to-air, and viewership actually drops. So I think it quite possibly could. Like you said, the younger generation are gonna access any way they can, via streaming. So it could end up being a good thing for the league.
Yeah, I was wanting to shift gears to the Fire here. Gaga Slonina, depending on which transfer rumor you read or who is quoting, Real Madrid and Chelsea have both been linked strongly to him. I know his agent said something about Real Madrid. And now the latest is I think maybe Chelsea outbid them. Are we kind of at a point where enjoy him while he lasts and enjoy it for this year? Or?
Yeah, that's kind of the right sentiment, Paul. And I think that a lot of Fire fans who have been plugged in and been following Twitter and been following Fabrizio Romano and the whole thing have sort of seen this coming. And that was that was what Fire fans were bracing themselves. Even during the offseason, there was interest very, very early on. There was never an offer, but there was an interest, which is as simple as somebody picking up a phone, calling George Heights, the sporting director at the Fire, and saying, "Tell me about your 17-year-old. What's he got in the bag?" So, there's always been that interest, but now it's becoming more real. And you're talking about the two most recent Champions League winners in Real Madrid and Chelsea, who are going after an 18-year-old goalkeeper from the Chicago Fire. That is an obscene, idea for Fire fans to sort of, digest and then realize. And listen, he came in last year for one game for an injury to Bobby Shuttleworth, played well, got a shutout against what would eventually be the reigning champions in NYCFC. And is basically just grown into the position. He's made some mistakes this year, but that was always going to happen. And we always talked about that. But everybody Chelsea and Madrid and even Bayern Munich to a certain extent see what everybody else sees, which is his positioning, his mentality, and his mechanics are incredibly good. He's still growing into his body a little bit. I think his distribution, his ball striking, and and explosiveness are going to come as he matures physically and from a biological standpoint. But he's an incredible kid. I spent a lot of time around him, it makes me feel bad about myself because I know what I was doing at 17 and 18 years old, and I knew my mindset. And this guy just it's like talking to a 35-year-old. He just has his head screwed on in the most beautiful way possible, and he deserves every ounce of success that he's going to have in the future.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about the biggest clubs in the entire world coming for a teenager coming to the Chicago Fire, but also he's homegrown too. I mean, that's another thing about this area, Chicagoland. So, he got off to a really hot start, just out of this world starts, come back to earth, kind of evened out. But you can't really blame him for what's gone wrong with the Fire this year. He's definitely far from their worst problem. What do you think is early on they couldn't score? Now we're seeing expected goals per game is going up, but they're not converting as much. What do you think is going to be the key to turn this thing around before it's too late?
I think it's just consistency. Ezra Hendrickson was was doing his media availability today, and he just simply said, we just gotta cut out the mistakes. We got to cut out the silly giveaways in the middle of the field. Cut out maybe a goalkeeping error from Gaga here and there. There's only been a couple of them, but it has cost the Fire in some big spots. And it's just putting together a complete 90 minutes performance on either side of the ball. Now that's a lot easier said than done, and that's what every manager wants to set out for his team when the opening whistle blows. But we saw at the beginning of the season an incredibly staunch defensive unit that really nobody could get by, and it was the best team defensively in MLS for 5 weeks. And now we're starting to see the other side of it, where we're giving up decent amount of goals, but the goals are starting to come, which they were dry. It was barren in the first 5 weeks of the season as well. So it's just finding that balance. And there was a lot of turnover, particularly at the top half of the roster from last year to this year. So it's just a matter of everybody gelling, everybody getting on the field at the same time, staying healthy and not picking up silly, yellows and red cards that have also, hindered the Fire from being able to put on these full performances, whether it be staying 11 men throughout the course of 90 minutes or missing big pieces for suspensions the following game. So it's consistency, and it's an incredibly young team, the fourth youngest team in Major League Soccer, and there's going to be ups and downs. And now it's just a matter of sort of leveling the ship and trying to find a way to put together 90 minutes.
So it sounds like it's a work in progress over there at the Chicago Fire. I feel like I'm not part of the team here. You guys have both got your Fire hats on.
Got our hats on, yeah.
Just got, the old bald head going on.
Bald and beautiful, baby.
You're too kind, mate. You're too kind.
Yeah, but you two both have Liverpool propaganda on display.
How are you going to call that propaganda? It can't be propaganda if it's just glaringly true, and we are the best team in the world. It cannot be propaganda.
Show Tyler your tattoo, Stuart.
Yeah, I just got the.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about maybe "You'll Never Walk Alone" somewhere. I don't have any tattoos just yet. One of my mates, one of my best friends in the world, has a really good one right on his bicep here. But
nice.
That's a beautiful piece of art. Paul can't appreciate art like that.
So I actually wanted to ask you a little bit about your work with Arlo White. You called some games with him for the Fire, obviously, and you guys have the Intercontinental Football Show. Like, obviously, Arlo's a bit of a legend in the football commentary world. I just wanted to get a bit of a feel for maybe stuff that you've learned from him. Maybe fun story or something.
Yeah, no. It's a great question because he was obviously somebody when I was younger and coming out of school, and I, decided I wanted to get into the broadcasting industry. He's obviously one of the first people that I'm looking up to, right? Voice of the Premier League on NBC, and somebody who I just genuinely was sort of setting out to be the American version of. I had a coach in college who now is the head coach at Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey. And he just, him and I were watching a game together. He goes, "You need to be the American Arlo White." He's like, the energy, the passion, the knowledge of the game, that's what you should set out to do. And I said, well, if I can be half of that, I'll consider my career, a great success. And lo and behold, I get this great opportunity with the Fire. And I'm told sort of like, at the last minute in my interview that Arlo is going to be coming in during the summer and doing 6 or 7 games, when available. And this is pre-COVID. And, there were a number of things that happened in between that prevented that from happening in 2020 and everything. And my jaw almost hit the floor that I was going to have the opportunity not only to, sort of be in his presence, but work with him, because then I got pushed to the sideline where I was sort of a sideline analyst and acting as the third member of the booth. And Arlo has been nothing but incredibly kind to me. He's been a mentor. He's been a friend. And it's just been an incredible experience because, to see somebody from afar and to see somebody who, especially people on TV and who are doing those big games, they sort of seem like mythical figures and not like real people. And then you're so glad to know that, it's the same guy who sort of you see on TV is the one who, you're hanging out with in person. But he and I mean, like, we've only spent so much time together in person. A lot of it is over Zoom and doing podcasts and everything like that. But we had a great night in Chicago together, just him and I. He went out to dinner with Frank Klopas, of course, the Chicago Fire legend and one of the assistant coaches on the Ezra Hendrickson staff. And then him and I met up later that night. It was around 8 or 9 o'clock. And him and I literally must have sat at it was one bar in Old Town, Paul. And we sat there and drank old fashions for, I think, 5 hours and just talked about life, football, the industry, and that was the first time we had ever met before. That was, I think that was that was before we started the podcast too. So we had never really spoken all that much. And it was like, two guys who had, been friends for a lifetime. It was really, really cool. And he's been nothing but great to me and a great asset to the Chicago Fire as well.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. I'll definitely check out that pod.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's fantastic. Getting to work with an idol, that must be really special. Sorry, Paul, I kind of interrupted you there, mate.
No. Just my last one for you is, what do you think needs to happen for Jardin Security to really kind of live up to the expectations, and also for the people coming out this summer, because I don't think anyone wants to go outside right now with a heat index of 105. But for the more pleasant evenings, what do you think are the biggest selling points coming to a Fire game this season?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as far as Shaqiri is concerned, I think that number one, being 100% fit. I think that the injury that he picked up after the March international window during the FC Dallas game, he came off in the 18th minute. It was a calf strain. I think that that's been bothering him as of late. And he has not been at 100%. It was not the same explosive blow by you, Shaqiri, get you out of your seat almost every time he touches the ball that we saw in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And I think that injury was slowing down. Unfortunately, he picked up a hamstring injury playing for Switzerland. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. They're still waiting for a full evaluation on Shaq. But I just think that, it's guys getting used to playing with somebody that high quality, because he's going to pick out passes and he's going to pick out passes and thread the needle on windows that you wouldn't even think to make the run for, if that makes sense. So that's a different level of sort of understanding the game for some guys who have not played with a guy like Shaqiri. So that's the first question. Number two, as far as what are the big selling points, I think that there's a slew of them. Number one, Gabriel Slonina. You can go get a look at an 18-year-old keeper who's going to get sold to one of the biggest clubs in the world at Soldier Field in Chicago in your backyard. One of the biggest complaints that a lot of Euro snobs will have in America is not being able to see top talent who then goes on to Europe. Here's your chance. Mm-hmm. It's right now. It's happening in front of you. Another guy, Jairo Torres, a young designated player from Mexico, 21 years old, bought him for about $6 million from Atlas. He was highly touted and getting highly recruited by a number of European clubs, decided to come to the Fire first. He too is somebody who's going to get flipped to Europe at some point in time. And of course, we have this robust Mexican soccer community in Chicago that just go absolutely crazy for a Mexican star, the same that they did with Blanco about 10 years ago. So those are a couple of young selling points. And then you think about some homegrowns and guys who are local that you just love to see playing at a high level. Chris Mueller from Schaumburg, who came over from Orlando City and Hibernian in Scotland. You think about Brian Gutierrez, a kid who, it basically came up at 17 years old and starting getting serious minutes for the Fire. And because of all the talent that the Fire brought in, he's not starting every game, but he's usually the first guy off the bench. He's electric. He likes to run at you. And Rafael Schijos, the center back, Bundesliga guy, who's coming over and giving great minutes to the Fire. He's a great leader. And he's sort of anchoring the back line. And then, I could go on and on about the talking points and what's the selling point for this team. But obviously everybody just wants to see them win. And I think that that's coming. So, if not for nothing else, I think there's a lot of great young talent. And then the last one, obviously, that doesn't need to be said, is a guy who's won Champions League. He's won Premier League. He's won everything you could possibly imagine in Xherdan Shaqiri. Again, having European talent in your backyard in Chicago, you can't really complain about that anymore because it's right there.
Fantastic answer. I'm on the verge of jumping on a plane and catching a Fire game myself, mate. That's brilliant.
I heard Paul's going to foot the bill for that.
Yeah.
I'd love you can stay in my place.
Business is expensive. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, Tyler. Fantastic. We really appreciate you, sparing some of your time out of your busy schedule to have a chit chat with us. Would you like to just plug your socials for our listeners out there?
Yeah, if anybody wants to find me on Twitter at TN Terens, TNTERENS. Of course, the Intercontinental Football Show with Arlo White. And tune into Fire games whenever you can. I think that this team is just around the corner from knocking on the door of something special. But thanks for having me on, guys. Really had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I had this much fun with two Scousers.
And definitely check out the Intercontinental Football Show. It's a great listen. Cheers, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Paul, we're getting close to the end of the episode. I'm not sure if you have anything from your week ahead that you want to share, like I usually would ask you or you would ask me. But I know there is a topic that you were very interested to get some stuff off your chest. So I'm going to give you the floor to do that right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I touched on this a little bit in the trip. The reason we spent a night in Charlotte being rerouted was we had 2 of our flights canceled in the middle of the night. We had a third flight, so 3 flights canceled in 2 days. One flight, we had to connect in Charlotte. This is just another thing that's terrible about airline travel. People with connecting flights aren't allowed to get off the plane first. They don't think about that, or they don't put people with connecting flights up front so they can get off faster. It's just whatever. It goes by row. That's really fucking stupid. Mm-hmm. We're hustling, we're running to get to the gate for that connecting flight, and then that's canceled. So we met this elderly couple from Virginia. The mother, had some knee problems and whatever, and they were traveling to South Florida for their son's wedding, and they missed it.
Oh wow,
Like,
that's terrible.
so American Airlines, their fuck ups, American Airlines incompetence forced, this couple to miss their own son's wedding.
That's disgraceful.
And it's something, we can all relate to this. We've all been through it. It's just amazing. I see articles like from 2020 about the headline is, why is American Airlines so awful? And it's like, that article's 2 years old. Nothing's been done. You go to United, obviously the stuff on United, you see there's fights. I mean,
Fights?
I get it. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what do you mean by fights?
Granted, these are probably isolated incidents, but in this era, in the cell phone, people take video and they post it online of airline passengers fighting with each other. And for whatever reason, it happens on United Airlines more, or at least the ones on United go viral more, or American and United are the biggest carriers. So obviously we're all going to have more stories about how bad American is and how bad United is. But yeah, there's fights, and I get it, because it's every man for himself. They're short staffed. They're surly sometimes. They don't help you. Like I said, if you're struggling to catch a connecting flight because they only gave you like 40 minutes in your layover, and you got to hike across the airport because they don't give a shit, they don't care, then you got to cut someone off to get out. Well, that person may not like getting cut off, and maybe they were drinking on the flight, or maybe they're sleep deprived from having to get up. So many flights get canceled, and there's fights. And
wow,
it's amazing that there's just something that just, if your job, my job, if we were that bad at our job, we would lose our job and never get hired again. But it's like this, somehow it's so weird that every airline sucks. And because they all suck, no one's going to do anything to get any better. And it started with like, okay, 9/11, the money they lost when they were all grounded, that was an excuse. Then it's like, oh, oil prices are so high, so we have to charge. Now we're losing money. Now I have to charge for this. And then it was, okay, no more free meal, no more free check bags. You want to pick out your seat, fee. I'm like, a fee? You're buying a ticket. You should have a seat. Why do you have to pay extra for that?
That's something that's baffled me as well. I fly back to Adelaide pretty often, and yeah, paying a fee to pick your seat seems it's just a nonsense.
And then they try to charge you for, if you want to board earlier, skip the lines, just all this bullshit. It's gonna be like, it's like, you don't want to sit on the floor, here's a fee. It's like, you want a seat that's not outside on the fuselage or the wing, now you're gonna pay a fee. And the word I did, at least on this trip, at least I found out a cause. Like, apparently there's a major pilot shortage, because during lockdown, the beginning of COVID, they no one was flying, so a lot of pilots took early retirement. And then, with the great reopening and, summer here, summer is just massive for travel, especially when the kids are off school. Everyone wants to, but they didn't plan for it. They didn't hire. I mean, they're going to go get military pilots out of retirement. They're going to go get these guys back in service. They don't have enough pilots. And that's why I have all these canceled flights. And I'm telling you, it's pretty scary when you check your bag and you go on a connecting flight and it's canceled. And you're like, well, where the hell is my stuff now?
American Airlines, United Airlines, just domestic flights is not much better in Australia, mate. They need to pull their finger out their ass and maybe start thinking about the customers first. The unfortunate thing is unless you want to drive forever, they've got you. You have to use them, don't you?
Yeah, that's really the bit. That's the whole gig. That's the whole con right there. Is like, if they're all bad, where you're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've heard good things about Virgin, and, they're owned by, billionaire Richard Branson. But I guess I would just say, if there was someone who really was a visionary and had the money and really cared and was like, I'm going to hire the best people. I'm going to hire a ton of people. I'm going to invest a ton of money. Like, we're going to go balls out. We're going to do this. And they were competent. Man, they could just own it.
There's a big opportunity there. Perhaps that's something we can invest in, Paul. Once we got outbid for Chelsea Football Club, so maybe we.
So
can...
we'll have to buy a fleet of 787s now.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. From the horse's mouth itself, after extra time is going to invest in air travel. Well, that's it for another week. As usual, follow us on our Twitter account at @AfterET_podcast, or follow Paul if you want to chit chat with him about air travel at Paul M Banks, or you can follow me at Stuey is sick of it. If you could also follow Edge of the Crowd on all the good social media channels, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, etc. You know the ones. That'd be great too. Check out edgeofthecrowd.com, Australia's leading sports news and pop culture website. As per usual, get all your latest football news at thesportsbank.net and show the third member of our pod some love by following at Otis Ginger Tabby on Instagram. If you enjoy the podcast, please click that subscribe button. And if you really dig it, please take time to give us a 5-star rating. But until next week, he's Paul M. Banks. I'm Stuart Kavanagh, and this has been After Extra Time.